Arguments about racing games are as old as time. And while many racers are extremely passionate about force feedback, graphics, and everything else, today all disputes end. Fellow racing scientist Champion Joe and I have stuck our heads together to create the ultimate racing game and took the best from these 8 categories to make it happen. And with that, welcome back to Overtake. Cooking up the formula for the perfect racing game isn't easy, guys. I can tell you that. But if anyone can do it, it is us. Starting off with our first point, and that's part of the basics. How do we want our game to look like? If we think back at some of the revolutionizing racing games over the years, graphically, many of them did not make the jump forward we expected. It was more on the gameplay side or the content side that they really found success. And that is, while graphics is still one of the leading reasons for a purchase in modern gaming, with around 70% of all players attesting to its importance. If you want to be part of the 100% happy viewership of our beautiful YouTube channel, then hitting that like button, leaving a sub and a tap on that bell is the fastest way to do so. But back to our utopic racing game. So in our world, a perfect racing game has to look the part. And to be honest, only one game comes to mind here, which would currently be fitting for that spot, and that is GT7. With Gran Turismo 7, a new major player has entered the simcade genre in 2022. And while many aspects of the game have left stuff to be desired, the graphics are undeniably beautiful. The in-house produced polyphony engine is state-of-the-art and is both kind to the eye and not as oversaturated to feel unnatural. The ray tracing is unmatched, and everything surrounding it is pretty much perfect, at least graphically. Another not too small part is the many options to take stunning photos and scapes. Especially for content creators like us, that makes a huge difference. The most realistic virtual car images have been created in GT7, and thus our game should take a page from Sony's book. Maybe not entirely stylistically, but from a technical standpoint for sure. But Joe, now that we know how the game would look like, what would you make it feel like?
When it comes to car handling in racing games, everyone seems to have a different favorite. Some praise iRacing for their detailed tire physics, other ACC in their nuanced FFB, and many say that AC1 and rFactor 2 are closest to real life. What for certain is that our perfectly crafted racing game needs to be a simulation. Sims just offer the deepest gameplay experience and will trigger the need for perfection in learning the actual skill of driving. Something a simcade or arcade racing game just can't offer, and the closest thing we have to the real deal. In my eyes, the perfect racing game handling would be a combination of different games to create one unanimous gameplay experience that tackles all the weaknesses of the different sims. For example, let's grab rFactor 2's detailed underlying physics, AC1's super direct feeling for the tire grip in the FFB, and ACC's FFB in terms of bumps, road feel and curbs. I think the merger of those three would make for an exciting racing title that hardly anyone could top. At least in my opinion. But which games would you merge together for the perfect sim handling? Let me know in the comments down below.
Interesting idea, Champion. And on the point of handling, I'd like to propose another point we should think of. As a possible player base of us should and will include a portion of casuals, there should be ways for them to enjoy the game too. Or number 3 is therefore casual friendliness. Maybe in a different mode or dedicated server where fun racing and competitiveness is mixed. The reasons are simple. Reach as many players as possible. A couple of things immediately come to mind. F1 is a franchise which understandably had many critics over the years. But you cannot deny one thing. For casual fun, this may be the go-to game on the market. Beside the incredible dedication to source material, the F1 series is just very beginner friendly and offering assists and support for those starting off. Racing in F1 is both fun and competitive at the same time. And I, for example, know the same amount of people who play the series casually as I do know people that want to get good at it. No other title really incorporates that in the racing game genre, at the moment at least. I especially want to mention the really good feeling on gamepad, for example. This may vary from title to title, but F1 is basically the only semi-competitive game that has fast time set on controller. If we were to create a perfect racing game, there should be room for those with less equipment and those just starting off. F1 is a prime example of having done that right. Aside from that aspect, in order to attract casuals, we should focus ourselves on what has worked in the past. Something like the street racing of TDU or NFS could work if we don't commit to a single racing series. Many younger players may have never been able to enjoy the feeling of driving an underground back in the day, just something anyone could pick up and instantly be entertained. And we need exactly that. The best of both worlds approach isn't simply defined by just Simcade. It goes much deeper than that. Having a realistic driving experience as the centerpiece of our game is a no-brainer. But it being connected or paired with casual fun to attract a broader audience is pretty much unheard of. In terms of content though, a few things have to be discussed before we finish our perfect racing game.
Exactly, Marvin, which is why for our number 4 we have to talk about the actual content of the game. Which type of cars should this Frankenstein's monster game feature? Usually there are two types of approaches to this. Either the devs focus on one class and one class alone, just like in ACC, or they spread their roster to many different car categories to have a more varied field, for example, like it is in Automobilista 2. But what's the desired state? Sure, more cars mean more different driving experiences, but it also means that the physics of the game won't be catered around one car class and will have a more general feel to it. But in my eyes, the more the merrier approach is the right one. I'd rather have the possibility to go street racing, cup racing, rallying and drifting in one game instead of super polished individual rides like you have it in ACC. To be totally honest, all I want is a super basic FFB that gives me the feeling of being in control of a vehicle and that feels very comprehensible in its feedback. And when this very well written physics translate to different disciplines working within the game, you get to the sweet spot. Because this is where sim racing, in my opinion, really shines, giving you endless opportunities. Speaking of opportunities, of course, I would also bring mod support into the discussion. Mods bring the power to the people and open up endless possibilities in which the game can develop. The best example for this is, of course, Assetto Corsa, which was granted a second life thanks to the modding community. Nowadays, you basically can find every real-life circuit in the world for AC, drive every car you can dream of, and thanks to some big patches, you can experience gameplay features that just weren't there at launch, like a full day-night cycle or rain. And sure, modding is a gray area when it comes to its legality. Are most mods rips from other games or rebuilds without any license? But this is a fictive game we are creating here, and I say, let's give the power to the people. If I had to create the perfect racing game, I would like to have as many high-quality cars from the devs themselves, but also have modding support and even more additions by a loving and caring community. But what about game modes? What do we want in that regard? Marvin?
Our sixth point will focus on online play, which should be provided in any aspiring racing title. A real problem when it comes to racing games is trying to figure out how the multiplayer experience should look like. Some of the more casual games are just too generic and don't feature any incentive to be better, and some of the more sim-oriented titles are completely devoid of any gamification and are too stuck in their puristic thought process, like only the lap time matters. A few, however, did make a good job implementing these things into their online play. iRacing is the first game I have to think of. You know what's so great about iRating? The simplicity. Win race, number go up. Lose race, smash wheel. An elo system a lot like iRating, or Race Room for that matter, will be paramount for our game. It's so easy to identify where you are in terms of skill and where others are at. This is one of the most important variables when the rest of the game is enjoyable to play, because it keeps people invested in doing more, racing more, getting better. Good online play should also include a solid online structure. And to be honest, I like the seasonal management of iRacing here as well. It circumvents that one car or one track is overused while the rest of the content just lays off to the side. Of course, fan favorites will always exist, but having seasons just widens the scope for content. And say what you want about the rest of the game, but playing Race Room is easy and enjoyable most of the time. So a mixture of iRacing and Race Room may be the way to go for multiplayer here. But what about a certain single player feature we are pretty much missing in any racing title nowadays? The story mode is often seen as a relic from the past or a focus of other genres. Seeing as many of us are easy to entertain with good racing, it is often believed to be overkill or useless, but that is exactly where I would contest. Players of racing games have shown time and time again that their interest for the game will grow astronomically with their investment in characters. The best example of that is the countless memes of Devin Butler that I see plastered around the web. And to be honest, breaking point was a rather meager story mode. Something along the lines of the classic DTM race driver from 2002 would be so cool nowadays. Having deep and engaging drama and story combined with good single-player racing against something like a Sophie AI, for example, would be absolutely killing it. Speaking to your manager and interacting with the rest of the grid was truly game-changing at the time of DTM Race Driver, but has pretty much vanished ever since. Along with that, sprinkle some of that Project Cars 2 story in there. That zero to hero motivation is as classic as coffee with sugar. But in combination with engaging story elements, this could be everything Grid Legends hoped to be. And for our alternative drivers, we should also have an option to dabble around with management features. No, not like an F1 manager, but something like Racing Life, which would tie everything in together. The mod, which is available for sims like AMS2, provides basic management features like selecting money to spend on upgrades and spare parts, and is amongst the most developed mods out there. A single-player focused game needs a lot of time devoted only to the solo experience. But our perfect racing game, of course, isn't bound to any earthly restrictions. It would incorporate all of that and the best stories racing games ever had to offer. This way, we would rise from the admittedly weak competition. For our final point, however, let's take a look at probably the most underrated feature in sim racing today.
Oh yes, it's underrated, alright? Just have a look at this clip. Okay, let me correct that for you. Much better. Sound plays a huge role in terms of immersion in racing games, and they play a central role in the fascination for cars as a whole. And we've come a long way since the early days in terms of sound, alright? Some games are real masterpieces when it comes to the whining and crying of engines. My personal favorite in that regard is Race Room, an often overlooked sim that features some of the best crafted engine sounds in all of gaming. And I also like ACC, but I have some colleagues that would argument otherwise. They're always telling me the sounds aren't close enough to real life, and I don't want to get into an argument with them. So in terms of sound, I'll opt for Race Room, which is a good choice, I think. And now that you've learned how we assemble our perfect racing game, it's your turn. How would your perfect game look like? Make a list and show us your findings in all of the 8 categories in the comments down below. And if you want to know why Emily really likes the new AMS2 update, check out her review of the new content here. But that's it from us today. Thank you so much for tuning in and see you next time around. Cheers!